everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the KIX EMAP workshop on understanding and monitoring national education budgets. My name is Anaka Harish Ganesh, and I'm a project officer for the Southeast Asia region with the KIX EMAP Hub. I'll give a quick technical introduction before we start the workshop. So, firstly, we have language interpretation available in English, Russian, and Arabic. To enable it, please click on the button as shown in the screen here and choose between the 3 channels according to your language of preference.
خلال الاجتماع سيكون هناك ترجمة فورية باللغة العربية والروسية برجاء الضغط على رمز الترجمة الفورية للوصول إلى القناة.
Okay. Next, the microphones are switched off because of the large room size, but please do keep your camera switched on if possible, as it is friendlier. We are recording this event and the recordings will be made publicly available. Please rename yourself in the participants window with your first name, last name, and your country. And please do introduce yourself in the chat. In case of any issues, please feel free to write to us using the chat function. We have dedicated Q&A sessions during this workshop. Please ask your questions at any time during the session and we'll group them together and address them during the Q&A sessions. When you ask your questions, please make sure to include your first name, your last name, and the country that you're from. Lastly, please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at KIX EMAP. And if you are mentioning us in your posts, please tag us as well at KIX EMAP and use the hashtags KIX EMAP and GPEKIX. Now I'll hand over the floor to the lead instructor of the workshop, Arushi Turve. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the day 2 of our workshop. I see several familiar faces from yesterday, but just in case you don't remember what was discussed yesterday, I will start with a recap. So just not going into any details, but yesterday we really talked about why it's important to engage in monitoring education budgets. What is a national budget? Equity challenges in education financing. We discussed the budget process in education in Bhutan from our speaker, Ugyen Pem, who is a district education officer in Bhutan. So we got a good perspective from her on the realities on the ground. And then we dealt very much deeper into some fundamental issues and elements of the budget. So we were not talking about the budget process, but just how the budget is set up. So we discussed the revenue sources, we discussed how expenditures are planned, how they are presented within the budget. And we lastly touched a little bit on the school funding formula. I will discuss this a little bit more today as well. So that's what we did yesterday. I know some of you may not have joined us yesterday. Don't worry, you will still be able to follow along today because it's a slightly different topic. Additionally, you will have access to the entire recording and a summary of the events and all of the slides later on. So we will be sending that around. If you have registered, you will be receiving that in your email. So welcome to today. It is going to be a packed agenda. So yesterday we were talking about just the elements of the budget. Today we really get into how to monitor national education budgets and really about the type of engagement and brainstorming how different stakeholders can engage with the budget process itself. So we will start with a very quick introduction of national budget cycles, because it's to be able to engage effectively, you need to know what process the budget is going through at the time of engagement and what is the best way and when to enter the discussion. Then we are lucky to have several presentations from our colleagues from countries. So we will have Orzugul Goybova presenting an introduction to education budgeting within Uzbekistan. After that, we will have Anna Marie Kalapet talk about budget preparation for the Department of Education in the Philippines. So it was a deeper dive into how budgets are prepared for education. Then I will take the floor again to discuss financial management things. So we will talk about decentralization. Not every country has the same system on who makes what decisions and how things are executed. We'll talk about decentralization. Then we will get into data and information sources. So where do you find information about the budget and about education financing? Because you need to be empowered with information to be able to engage in the conversation. Then we will have a fantastic presentation from Cambodia on their journey on reform of education financial management system. So you will see the actual elements of financial management systems, financial management information systems. Then the last half of the entire workshop will be dedicated to us discussing what is the space for engagement at different stages of the budget process. So I will explain a little bit more on what happens in that stage of the budget cycle, but then we kind of open up the floor for you to react to how you think different stakeholders can engage at that stage. Once again, we will be sharing lots and lots of resources, so keep an eye on the chat. There will be lots of links shared. All of these links will be shared with you later on as well, but if you want to, after this workshop, just start getting into everything, I would suggest opening them up and saving them on your computer right now. So let me start with the budget cycle. This is a very simple diagram of what a budget cycle is, but let me get into detail on what are these 4 main steps that happen in pretty much every country. They may look slightly different, but these are the main overall steps that happen. So the first step is budget formulation, which is where the countries are preparing their budget. Most of it is driven by the central government or Ministry of Finance or a similar type of ministry. They develop some kind of a draft budget plan with macroeconomic analysis, and then they engage with line ministries on negotiating what the line ministries really need. So in parallel at that time, line ministries are also estimating their costs. We will hear a little bit more about this from the Philippines a little bit later. Once the line ministries and the central government, the executive branch of the government, have agreed on a budget proposal that's presented to the parliament, the legislatures, who then debate, review, amend any kind of elements that are needed in the draft budget. And finally, once they are satisfied with how the budget looks for the year, they will pass that into law. So that will be the budget law. In some countries, it would be called the Appropriation Act. And then the rest of the year is about actually executing that budget. So all of the line ministries, agencies, departments use that to then actually spend the money and do the service delivery and actually implement the policies, programs that are outlined in the budget itself. And at the end of the cycle, there's a budget evaluation. There's some audits done, there are reports put together on how did the spending actually happen. And this is when we find out how much money was actually spent. At the beginning, there's a plan during the budget formulation and approval. And at the end, there's an assessment on how did that plan work out? How was the spending done? Now, this makes it seem like everything happens within 1 year. That's not quite the case. There are multiple things happening within a year. So this is a sample budget cycle timeline. Every country has its own timeline, but it is usually a 12-month process, but multiple things are happening. So if a country's fiscal year, which is the year when actual financial spending is happening, starts in July and ends in June, which is 12 months, then the entire year budget execution is happening because you need money the entire year. You need to be spending, okay? So every month there's budget execution happening of some sort, okay? Money is being spent, activities are happening. usually mid-year, there's an assessment on, hey, was our estimate on what was needed for that line ministry or everyone, was that correct or not? So there's a little bit of a review that happens, and often there would be another supplementary budget presented and approved depending on whether more or less money was spent or if money needs to be adjusted from one area to another area. So there would be another document released. But simultaneously, things are happening about the previous year and the next year, right? So at the same time, there would be evaluation happening of the previous year. So all of the audits will be happening. And that information will be used to start planning for the next year. So formulation for the next year's budget will also be happening after the evaluations are done. So within a year, multiple things are happening at the same time. Okay, so keep that in mind. Depending on where and how and what you want to do, you'll have to find the right place and the right actors to go engage with. So let us do a quick poll of everyone and see if you know when the process of creating next year's budget begins in your country. Which month does it really start in your country? Okay, just think about whether you know that month or not. And if you do not know this month, that's a good indication to then do a little bit more research and start engaging in that process. So go find out. It should be fairly easily available. Okay. Okay, I'll wait for a few more responses to come in before I show you the results. All right, I can see the results as they come in, and it's looking very promising. Okay, I will show you the results now. Okay, so looks like most of you know when the process starts. That is fantastic news. You will be able to take a lot of the information today and start engaging with the process. Okay. All right. So now we are going to move into showing you a really good example of how the budget process happens in a country, which is Uzbekistan. Our speaker, Orzugul Goyabova, who is a senior specialist at the Ministry of Preschool and School Education of the Republic of Uzbekistan, will be presenting to us. She will give us a presentation, and then there will be a few minutes there for you to ask her specific questions. So, okay.
Hello,
I will hand it
everyone.
over to
Hello.
Orzu.
Yeah. Thank you, Arushi. Good morning and good afternoon from wherever parts of the world you're watching and you are participating at this workshop. I am Orzugul Goyabova, Senior Specialist at the Ministry of Preschool and School of Education of the Republic of Uzbekistan. So today I will be talking about giving some general overview in education budgeting in Uzbekistan. So, well, basically, all the budgeting process in all spheres is governed by the State Budget Code in Uzbekistan, which is renewed in 2014. And the key areas of allocation include social sphere, social support of the population, state support for non-governmental, non-commercial organizations, and economic resource. And the education system is included in social sphere, all types of education, starting from primary, preschool, and until personal retraining. Can I have next one, please, Anaka? Well, the second, I will be talking about the general budgeting process in all spheres. So in Uzbekistan for the next year, budget starts from July 25th. So in July 25th, by July 25th, all the district and city administrations submit their project to their respective financial departments. If it is in education system, so schools and other education departments submit their projects to the finance department of the Ministry of Preschool and School Education. And by August 1st, financial departments within the ministry submit their projects to the Ministry of Finance of the Republic of Uzbekistan. So in the second stage is reviewing and submission. In this stage, basically, Ministry of Finance review all the projects. If there are some gaps missing, if there are some misunderstandings, they ask the ministries resubmit their projects. And then by September 20, Cabinet of Ministries, by September 15, Ministry of Finance submit to Cabinet Ministries. And then by September 20, Cabinet of Ministries submit the whole education budget projects to the President's Administration and Accounting Chamber. And the third stage is conclusion and presentation. Overall, by October 15th, the Cabinet of Ministries drafts the budget, state budget law, so which is adopted annually. And it presents, the Cabinet of Ministries presents the draft of the budget law to the Senate of Oli Majlis. So annually for the next year budgeting, the Senate of Oli Majlis approves the law on state budget until December 15th. So it's the whole process of how the state budgeting is allocated in different areas. Can I have the second? The government actually has launched different initiatives on improving the education budgeting. So we will be talking about education, innovative education budgeting. The first one is open budget. So if you Google open budget in Uzbekistan, this is also kind of new initiative to improve the budgeting system. So in this case, the government allocates certain amount of money for different projects on reconstruction and infrastructure. So I'm going to talk about the education system. So the schools, basically, if they want if they want to get budget from the government to do some reconstruction, some areas, or for example, reconstruction and roads, right? So they make an application and they submit. So in this process, everyone, all citizens of Uzbekistan can vote to any kind of projects, and the project that gets more votes will be financed by the government. So if you go to the page open budget, you can see like 18 million citizens voted to allocate 111 million towards the school infrastructure and like reconstruction. So it's been just 3 years. So this initiative has started in 2021. And the second one, it's quite new. So it has launched this year, which is called Yeşil Makan. In English, it is green area. In this, again, it's like open budget, but it's additional another initiative. So it's also the government allocates money for different projects. It's mainly, it should be eco-friendly projects. It's about planting trees. So schools, again, can submit their application. So about the area which is really urgent or required to plant trees. And then the one that gets more votes by the citizens can get financed by the government. And the third one is IT based projects. So we have special IT schools. If any of the students of IT schools gets a job, the government reimburses $2,000 for each student when the student gets a job in IT system, in IT sphere. So can I have this second slide, please? Yep. Well, I am a non-finance staff at the ministry. Now I'm going to share my experience, how I usually, as a team, we usually engage in budgeting within the ministry. So we usually make plans, set goals, long-term strategic plans for the Ministry of Education, preschool and school education. The plans should be aligned with the Uzbekistan 2030 strategy. So, and then we discuss other departments' plans on achieving those goals, their projects, departments such as curriculum methodology, or teacher professional development departments. We review their projects, we discuss it, whether it's priority or whether the project helps us to achieve those goals. And discuss about the budget that should be required, that should be aligned, that should be allocated to achieve, to implement those projects. And the third stage that we engage in budgeting is drafting budget proposals for the ministry. We engage it with finance department usually. So it takes like months to prepare budget proposal. And then after getting budget, after getting the budget by the government, we usually keep track on resource allocation as well, whether each project is getting enough budget, or how each project within the ministry is implementing all the resource. And as a team, and can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, basically, as a team, as a strategic development team, we engage in the financing, in the budgeting process. I can say like 90% each time, because we are the heart of the ministry, I can say. So, and then as a team, we come up with some approach to improve the engagement of the ministries, all the ministry departments in budgeting process within the ministry. So we made we usually use the app Trello. I think you know that, to keep the track of each project. So it gives us clear communication among all departments. All departments can see each project, how it is going, in what stage we are, how much amount of money is allocated in each project, and what is missing there, and they can just right there, like they leave comments as well. So it gives us clear communication with other departments, and every staff of the department can access to the relative project, of course. And the next one is endorsement of policy. So as I told you, our department is the heart of the ministry, and we play the bridge between other ministries and deputy minister and the minister. So we do have relevant deputy minister in financing. If there are some initiative within the ministry, like from the staff of other departments, we usually work on that initiative, and we usually submit the application to the relevant deputy minister to make the process faster to implement those projects. And then capacity building, we are thinking about we haven't launched this project yet, but we are thinking about the training of non-finance staff within the ministry on budgeting process, because even though like the staff from teacher professional development or other not non-finance staff should know at least like basic knowledge in budgeting process, so in order to keep track of the old projects, and yeah, it's all about what I wanted to share. So it's actually it's been like 1 year I've been working at the ministry, so I'm still learning, and I don't have really like experience in budgeting process, but yeah.
Portugal, it was
Yep.
very clear, very concise, very well received presentation, and we had
Thank you.
very
Tim.
interesting comments where people were saying that the budget process sounded really inclusive and bottom up, and they hope some of the new initiatives that Uzbekistan is promoting have good results. So I'll choose here 2 questions from the several questions we had.
Yeah, sure.
We have from the National Education Coalition in South Sudan, Alex Diko, and also from a colleague from Pakistan, who are asking about the involvement of civil society in the budget process. If you can share a little bit the involvement of civil society in the budget process of Uzbekistan, if you are aware of it.
Yeah, sure. So as I told you, so we have like the government initiative in order to encourage civil society to participate in budgeting process. It's like I have mentioned it, the open budget system and the like green area project where citizens can vote to different projects that should be financed by the government. I think this gives the freedom to the citizen, and they feel themselves as if like they are participating in project and they are adding their contribution in the budgeting system. And it's been I think 3 years that there have been improvement on that.
Also, we have here a difficult question, and you can tell your experience and share what you. And I think it's a question that's in most of the education systems in our region they face, which is the connection with the Ministry of Finance. And
Yeah.
there is a question from let's see it, from Fotu Ioannis from Jordan, asking if you receive a ceiling from the Ministry of Finance for your budget formulation. And then Fatih Akhtas also wants to know more about your engagement on the budget process with the Ministry of Finance. Who sets the priorities, who sets usually the budget envelopes? If you can talk a little bit more about this relationship with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Education, and any challenges or any good practices that you'd like to share.
Yeah, sure. But I didn't get the first question though.
The first question is if the Ministry of Finance, at the beginning of the budget formulation, they say that the Ministry of Education, they can only develop a budget up to a certain threshold, up to a certain limit amount.
Basically, the involvement of the ministry in budgeting with the finance is goes like this. Like basically the Ministry of Finance sets the priorities, and they set the limit, and then according to that we allocate we come up with the projects that the budgeting should be allocated. So well, I think
yes. So you responded. And any other thing in this process that you like to share, or you think it's
from this year, like 2020 for 2020-40, all the all the projects within the education is like the process of budgeting is conducted by the Ministry of Education. But before, the Ministry of Finance was responsible for the education, the allocation of the resource in the education projects. Was I able to explain that?
Yes,
And now
incredible.
it's the responsibility of the Minister of Education. So we do track, we do allocate, we do decide where exactly should the money allocated in the education system. So the Minister of Finance just allocates money, and it's in our hands how to allocate it. Yeah.
Sure. It's very clear. Thank you so much, also, for sharing the experience of Uzbekistan. We have many other questions that we will be addressing as we progress in the workshop. And I hand over back to Arushi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Urzugul. There are definitely lots and lots of questions coming in chat, and I would encourage you to see if there are any that you can answer within the chat itself by typing it out. So now we have another presentation from the Philippines. Ms. Ana Marie Contreras Calapet, who's the director at the Department of Education Central Office within the Office of Director for Finance Services. She will be giving us a presentation on the budget preparation process at the department in the Philippines itself. So let me hand it over to Ana Marie, and we will share the slides very soon.
Good afternoon. Am I heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Mabuhay. Great day, everyone. Before I start, allow me to thank GPE KIX EMAP for organizing this event. Special thanks go to Arushi, Anaka, Jose, and Jean, and to my colleagues in DepEd, the Project Management Service Director TOOS, and the planning team, and Zina, who initially prepared this PowerPoint presentation. Again, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I am Ana Marie Calapit, the Finance Service Director of the Department of Education Philippines. As Director for Finance of the Philippines' largest bureaucracy of 1,100,000 teaching and non-teaching staff, I co-manage the Department of Education's 750 billion peso budget through strategic and operational leadership in efficiently and effectively delivering finance-related services. I'm going to discuss today the budget preparation cycle, which is the first phase of the Philippine budget cycle. So on your screen, you will see the 4 phases of the Philippine budget process. This was also described earlier by Arushi. The first phase is the budget preparation. The second one is budget legislation. The third is budget execution. The fourth is accountability. Each phase is distinctly separate from the others, but they overlap in the implementation of the budget during the budget year. The budget preparation for the next budget year proceeds while government agencies are executing the budget for the current year, and at the same time, engaged in budget accountability and review of the past year's budget. Budget preparation is the first step of the annual budget preparation, which begins with the determination of the overall economic targets, expenditure levels, revenue projection, and the financing plan by the Development Budget Coordinating Committee. The first phase starts with the issuance of a budget call by the Department of Budget and Management, or the DBM. The budget call contains budget parameters earlier set by the Development Budget Coordination Committee, as well as policy guidelines and procedures to aid government agencies in the preparation and submission of their budget proposals. The budget call is of 2 kinds. The National Budget Call, which is addressed to all agencies, including state universities and colleges, and the second one is the Corporate Budget Call, which is addressed to all government-owned and controlled corporations. and government financial institutions. Following the issuance of the budget call, as you see on the screen, the various departments and agencies submit their respective agency proposals to the DBM. To boost citizen participation, the current administration has tasked the various departments and agencies to partner with civil society organizations and other citizen stakeholders in the preparation of the agency budget proposals, which are then presented before a technical panel of the DBM in scheduled budget hearings wherein the various departments and agencies are given the opportunity to defend the budget proposal. The DBM bureaus thereafter review the agency budget proposal and come up with recommendations for the Executive Review Board, comprised of the DBM Secretary and the DBM senior officials. The discussions of the Executive Review Board cover prioritization of programs and their corresponding support, vis-a-vis the priority agenda of the national government and their implementation. This will then be consolidated and the recommended agency budgets into the National Expenditure Program, or what we call NEP, and a Budget Expenditure and Sources of Financing, or the BESF. The NEP provides the details of spending for the agency by program, activity, or project. We call it PAPS, and is then submitted in the form of the proposed GAA, or the General Appropriations Act. The details of selected programs and projects is the more detailed disaggregation of key PAPs in the NEP, especially those in line with the national government's development plan. It is thereafter presented by our Department of Budget and Management to the President and the Cabinet for further refinements or reprioritization. Once the NEP is approved by the President and the Cabinet, the DBM, or the Department of Budget and Management, prepares the budget documents for submission to Congress. And the budget documents consist of the President's budget message, through which the President explains the policy framework and budget priorities. So the first part, the budget preparation, ends with the President's budget. Normally starts from January to July of the prior fiscal year. I will not be discussing the legislation part, the execution part, and the accountability part, as other speakers, I believe, are also going to discuss these phases of the budget cycle. Next slide, please. All right. For the next slide, you can see here the major process of the DepEd, or the Department of Education Central Office, in the preparation of the budget. It is divided into 4 parts: the orientation and preparation, the deliberation, the packaging and submission of plans and budget proposal, and then followed by the submission of the budget proposal itself. So from January to February, the first part, the orientation and preparation, we conduct meetings, the technical working groups conduct meetings and have interface with various strands of the department. We have meetings with procurement planning to have our forward estimates of the basic education inputs and other programs, activities, and projects. We also have kickoff orientations on guidelines and timelines for example, for a 3-year plan and budget preparation. We also have the in-house detailing of plans and budget. For the second part, which runs in February, we have the deliberations. Each strand of the Department of Education will be presenting their budget, and by March, this will be presented, the plans and budget proposals, to the Office of the Secretary, or to the head of the Department of Education. The presentation of the budget kit will also be given to the Executive Committee, or the undersecretaries of the Department of Education. The third phase is the packaging and submission of plans and budget proposal. This runs from February to March. So each of the strands in the office or in the department will be submitting their proposals to the Budget Preparation Technical Working Group and will be consolidated for submission. The last phase of the budget preparation side would be the final adjustments. From February to March again, we will be adjusting based on the presentations and the inputs of our execom and the adjustment and packaging of the budget proposal until April. And then by April to May, we will be submitting this to the Department of Budget and Management. Next slide, please. Okay. For this slide, the Philippines continues the adoption of the following administrative reforms for greater budget transparency, openness, accountability, and reliability. So with DepEd as well. We are guided by the 2025 National Budget Call issued by the DBM, and we follow the bullets that you see on the board. So when we say two-tier budgeting approach, we separate the discussion and deliberation about ongoing or existing programs, activities, and projects from the consideration of entirely new spending or proposals, including proposals for expansion of existing activities. So for Tier 1, this is the estimated actual cash requirements for ongoing projects, activities, and programs. For Tier 2, these are the implementation of new programs or activities, could be abolition or expansion of programs, activities, and projects, or there could be major changes in the organizational structure of an agency, or there could be transfer of functions between agencies. So that's the first consideration. The next consideration would be the cash budgeting system. It is the implementation of the operational cash budget to ensure availability of cash resource for priority development projects. Our budget is also PREXI-based. PREXI means Program Expenditure Classification. It reflects the budget or the link between the budget and the strategies, budgets and the results, and facilitates the monitoring and evaluation of programs with the performance indicators attached to each program. It should enable various stakeholders to better manage the public expenditure management process through programs and sub-programs of the agency. Next, we also take into consideration the disaggregation of lump sums within the agency's specific budgets to reflect the PAPs or the projects, activities, and programs implementing agencies and or regional local levels. We also have the Unified Accounts Code structure, which aims to facilitate financial reporting and consolidation of actual revenue collection and expenditure. We also consider program convergence budgeting, or PCB, to link, harmonize, and synchronize the timing of critical program interventions. Also, the open government partnership. We do this to strengthen the participation of civil society organizations and to ensure sustainability of budget and governance reforms. On the right side, I will be discussing this further in the next slides. So next slide, please. So apart from those I've mentioned previously, our budget proposal also incorporates the following: the 8-point socioeconomic agenda, which is the overall goal to reinvigorate job creation, poverty reduction by steering the economy back to its high growth path, and more importantly, through economic transformation for a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. The next in consideration is our medium-term fiscal framework. It underscores our commitment to fiscal consolidation and debt sustainability while allocating at least 5% of the GDP annually to infrastructure spending. You also consider the LGU capacity building program to foster a sense of ownership and empowerment so that community partners gain greater control over their own future development. We also consider the Philippine Development Plan from 2023 to 2028. This is a plan for deep economic and social transformation to reinvigorate job creation, as mentioned earlier, and accelerate poverty reduction by steering the economy back on a high growth path. We also carry the Build Better More programs, which seeks to accelerate the public infrastructure expenditure from an average of 2.9% of gross domestic product during the Aquino regime to about 77.3% at the end of this administration. Last is the harmonization of regional plans with national priorities. This discusses the features of the new types of integrated planning required to reflect key commitments coming out of long-term and mid-term national priority setting exercises. So these are some of the considerations that we take in our budget preparation. Next slide, please. For DepEd, our budget preparations are anchored also on the following policies and programs. Our Secretary, Vice President, and Secretary, Sara Duterte, led the launching of the Matatag Agenda to make the curriculum relevant to produce competent, job-ready, active, and responsible citizens. We take the necessary steps to accelerate delivery of basic education facilities and services, take good care of learners by promoting their well-being, inclusive education, and positive learning environment, and give support to teachers to perform better. That's what Matatag stands for. Under the Matatag Agenda, Matatag is resilient in English. The Matatag curriculum was launched last August, to decongest the current K-12 curriculum by 70%. This curriculum focuses on foundational literacy and numeracy skills of learners in the early years in basic education. To implement the Matatag curriculum, Vice President DepEd Secretary Sara Duterte signed this order on DepEd's Learning Recovery Program, which is designed to improve students' numeracy and literacy and strengthen their education sector's learning recovery. So we have this National Learning Recovery Program, which underscores the need to address learning losses among the students caused by the COVID-19 pandemic's disruption of in-person schooling. Under the DepEd's Learning Recovery Program, the department will roll out a national reading program, the National Mathematics Program, and a National Science and Technology Program. The recovery program will also prioritize the conduct of a voluntary learning camp covering all subjects during the school break from July to August. Apart from this, we also implement the blended learning and other distance learning modalities. We do this for disaster-prone areas and high classroom shortage areas. We also implement early procurement activities, particularly for basic education inputs. The last slide, please. So apart from what I've discussed, these are our evaluation criteria in the budget preparation. We take into consideration the impact of the country's debt burden and the competing demands of government agencies. So we need to make sure that the DepEd budget will be optimized. For DepEd, you see the evaluation process criteria includes relevance, feasibility, and implementation readiness of the PAPs. In summary, for DepEd, our process will consider the utilization of the previous year's budget and the implementation progress of our mandated programs and projects. We ensure that only those proposals which are implementation ready are included in the budget. I hope I was able to discuss with you how the Philippines prepares its budget, at least the Department of Education prepares its budget. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ana Marie. You were definitely able to give us an excellent oversight of what's happening in the Philippines. Also, in the meantime, you also responded to some of the questions that have been raised in the chat. And in the interest of time, I will choose here 2 questions that came and asking for you to address it in single rounds. There is a question that relates to when you spoke that Philippines is adopting the program-based budgeting, and Atik Rehman from the government of Punjab in Pakistan asks what measures are in place to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of budget utilization in improving educational outcomes. If you could, let's first react to this one, and I'll ask you the second one, Anna-Marie. Yeah.
All right. With regard to our PAPs, or what we call the programs, activities, and projects, do I understand the question that the first one is concerned with explaining how we budget for the PAPs, or the projects, activities, and programs? Is that right?
No, the question is, I said I was going to put 2 questions, but I'm just going to go for 1 question. So the question is about what measures do you take to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of budget utilization to improving educational outcomes. So basically, how do you monitor your budget, the way you are spending it, and how much it is linked to the progress in education?
Yes, we monitor our budget utilization. We use our Office of Program Management Office to monitor each of the PAPs that are being implemented by various clusters in our department. We regularly coordinate with program teams handling our big ticket programs, activities, and projects to make sure that the budgets are utilized, the proposals that they have included in the budget are implemented, and that the capital outlay that they have promised to procure will also be procured in the same year. We regularly conduct, our planning team regularly conducts our program implementation review. It's a quarterly activity wherein we gather all our program teams in charge of various projects, especially the big ticket ones, so that we can apprise them of how much budget they have already utilized for the quarter. We give them a rating of green for a very good budget utilization. We give them yellow for moderately satisfactory grade. We give them a red if they are, they fall behind the benchmark of utilizing their budgets. These quarterly reviews are very important, especially because we need to utilize the budget in the same fiscal year so that we increase our budget utilization rate. It's important for us to monitor our budgets because it is the benchmark or the basis for the approval of the budget for next year. So that's how one of the ways that we monitor each of our PAPs.
It's wonderful to hear that mechanism you have while you are giving feedback continuously to the implementing agencies. There are so many questions, but there is here some topic that is consistently being asked. Is if you could share in 1 minute the experience of the Philippines with CSOs' involvement in education budgeting. If you can, this has been a question that has been appearing several times here. If you could share it in 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, that will be appreciated, Anna-Marie, please.
Yes, Jose. I also heard that it was also asked of the first speaker a while ago. And as I have discussed earlier, it is one of the considerations that we take. In fact, some CSOs, for example, civil service organizations, even present to us a budget proposal, their own budget proposal to the DepEd. Our budget is open to the public. They can actually download it from our website, and these CSOs can actually scrutinize each PAP or each program, activity, and project that we implement. And they even have this time with us to present and tell us how we can improve our budget. We do that in several conferences with various CSOs in consideration for the next budget cycle. That's how we do it for the budget preparation. And then for the expenditure part, when we are already executing the budget, during the procurement stage, it is also open to the public. So our bidding process is actually live streamed on YouTube so that it is very transparent. And we also invite civil society groups to join and be present during the bidding process as observers. That's how transparent we are in the course of implementing and using our budget. So these are just some of the things that we do in collaboration with CSOs in the preparation and implementation of the budget.
Perfect, Ana Maria. Thank you so much for sharing the experience of Philippines and bringing concrete examples of what's happening in the Philippines. I'll hand over to Arushi to lead us on to the next presentation. Thank you, Ana Maria.
You're welcome, Jose.
Thank you, Ana Marie. Very practical and exciting, innovative ways that the Philippines is engaging and conducting the budget process. So we've had a little bit of a change to the program. Our next speaker has to go for something else. So we are actually going to have a presentation from Cambodia right away. And I will explain further the information to you when we are talking about financial management. But for now, let's hear from His Excellency Tep Feoret. He's the Director General of Administration and Finance at the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports in Cambodia. And he will be able to show us how budgets are monitored within the system. Cambodia is embarking on a education financial management reform through the Global Compact through the Compact with Global Partnership for Education. And he will be able to talk us through the major components that are there within this financial management information system. So a lot of the questions that have been coming up on how does the ministry monitor these things, our next speaker will be able to give us that information for Cambodia.
Thank you so much, Ms. Arushi. My apologies, actually, because I'm on the move on my way to Australia. So excuse interruption that may have because I am at the airport. So I try to quickly move us within my presentation, and you may ask any questions or shoot me a message to clarify my presentation or any other question that you may have beside the presentation that I have going on. Next, please. Next. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
It seems like my presentation has stuck. Can you move to the next page, please?
Oh, Arushi, would you mind telling me if the presentation is moving for you?
It's not moving.
Oh, okay.
It's still on the main, the first page.
Okay. Just give me a moment.
Yes,
No.
now it moved. It moved to number 3. Can you move back one?
Yep, to the content.
Okay. Is it working now?
Yes,
Yep,
now
yep,
it's
thank you.
working. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Again, my presentation today is going to be touch on a overview of what the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport of Cambodia have been implementing the education financial management system in place. Briefly is that in 2014, Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport of Cambodia has also embarking on the education reform, and we have 8 key priorities. And with that 8 key priorities, one of the main key reform is the education financial management reform, to make sure, as our previous colleagues or presenter are presenting, ensuring the transparency, accountability, reporting, evaluation, all those budget that been decentralizing to the budget entities. And we have a 4 level of budget entities. We have central, we have provincial, second layer, and third layer have district, and the fourth layers we have a school. So today I will walk you through these 6 content on the purpose of why we created EFMS and how the history, how we moved from 2011 until now, and then what are the modules that been incorporated, and fourth, the implementation, who are we covering, and fifth, risk and impediment. 6 is opportunity for further enhance our systems. Next. Again, as I sort of briefly touch up on my opening, the government Cambodia has embarked on the public financial reform, and they consist of 4 stages. The first stage, we're talking about the financial credibility, and second stage, we're talking about the financial accountability. And the financial accountability, this is where system become a backbone of the financial reform to enhance and help education propel or move better, spend better in that matter. So knowing that when we decentralizing the budget to the departmental, we realize that in one hand, ensuring that the budget entity have the budget to implement their policy, their activities. On the other hand, we want to make sure that there is accountability, that all spending will be recording, will be analyzing, and there's a dashboard for our management, and especially the Secretary of State in charge of each sector knows where their departmental spending, how they've been spending, if there are any other issue remaining or uprising that need to be addressed or challenged. Next.
Good afternoon, members and guests. Catching passenger, Mr. Raymond Lee, passenger, Mr. Raymond Lee.
Again, the system allow the linkage. We have a policy, we have the ESP, the education system, the education strategy plan. We have priority and AOP, annual operating plan. We have BSP, budget strategy plan. Previously, these strategy are fragmented. So to bring this things together, the policy, the budget requires system that allow us to link, the ESP with the BSP, with the AOP and PB, to make sure that these been classified by economics, classification, administrations, program, function that allow us to dissect and look at individual, let's say, early childhood, let's say by subsector, let's say primary, let's say secondary, so on and so forth. Next. Again, these are the snapshot, quick brief on how the system was evolved. In 2011, the ADB was our partner in terms of providing the assistance for the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport to develop a system to manage it. And then it moved and launched in 2015 to the central budget entity and provincial educations. And then during the implementation for the past 2 years between 2015 2017, we see some challenges that arise from the robustness, the scalability, the functionality, and the sustainability of the system that require us to take over and redevelop a system that responds to the demand of the ministry. And also we do in-house brewing because of the sustainability and ensure that the cost effective in such a way. Next. Yes, again, system module. We have two platforms. Currently, we have a web application, and then we have a desktop. The challenge is that, as you know, that we roll this out nationwide. We're covering at the 4 level, as I mentioned early on, especially school. We decentralizing the budget down to the scale school level. So school is a budget entity, and the challenge, the connectivity. Our assessment based on the data collection, about 20% or 25% of our school is not online due to demographic geography, and this is why we have to be more prudent and more flexible to accommodate our users. So we have web for the main area, and then we have a desk application for a remote where connectivity remain a challenge. Next. Again, for the module for the desktop, it's covering on financial report, the annual budget plan, school annual budget plan, the budget implementation report, and the wage budget plan. Next. Again, for the web apps, we covering on the pre-cash management. We have the teacher training center that needs to be another module to covering this institution, and also a general one. It involves the budget allocation, as our previous speaker have mentioned as well. Budget movement. This is the budget, appropriations, purchase order, account payable, accounting report, the financial report, and also the system covering the school operating fund. And recently, we just launched a mission management, meaning that when you go abroad, when you travel from one province to province, central to province, the government provide the DSA. So this is a DSA because based on the mileage and the level of the staff. Next. Again, we also incorporate the development, the system, the module also covering the DP. We also are covering the annual budget plan, procurement, account receivable, fixed asset, and audit trail. So basically, there are 15 modules that is covering in the EFMS system for the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports. Next.
512 for immediate departure. We apologize for the inconvenience caused.
As I mentioned early on, we have a central government, central ministry, and then we have 34 central budget, and then we have 25 provincial Department of Education, Youth and Sport. We have teacher training center. We have the district, 208 district, and then we have school, or about under 10,000 schools nationwide. Next.
您好，以下为特别登机广播国泰航空公司 CX701。
Again, we identify some risks that come with with our system. I think this is very general. That happened similar maybe in Philippines as well, because I know Philippines has the system in place as well. We have technical challenge, due to the complexity and the scalability, flexibility of the system that require a lot of skillful IT, and also we facing some challenge on the resource constraint that we also negotiation not only with the government but also DP like ADB, like World Bank, like like other like GP as well, to make sure that these will be met to support to meet the target. And also infrastructure is also a challenge, and one of the important challenge is the people. This is why change management require to be implemented, and also the ever-changing of the requirement, meaning that we already set a scope, but then when we present to our management, the management say, okay, this is too small or too big, and or we have to add a different scope into our timeline, that the rollout plan facing some challenge or delay. Next. Again, out of these challenges, we also identify opportunities, and also the next way forward, how we will be able to expand and assess, evaluate our system for further functionality. So innovation, efficiency, human resource collaboration, as I mentioned, and then scalability and room for growth on a different front, a different function, and last but not least, the data analysis, so that we can use the data to as evidence to negotiate with Ministry of Education, Ministry of Economic and Finance for a budget increase. Thanks. Thank you much for your attention. I know it's a very brief, quick, and some interruptions, but if you have any further questions on the detail, you may ask, or you may send me a text message. Thank you much, Arusi.
Sorry, I didn't get this part, Director General. You will have time to address 1 or 2 questions?
I do,
time?
please.
Yes, okay.
I do.
Director, so it's a pleasure to hear the innovation that is conducting in this area. And you mentioned at the end of your presentation, you talked a little bit about the challenges. And there was a question before. If you could highlight to all of our audience today, which are the 2 top challenges that you face in this reform of the education budgeting process? You can develop that a little bit more.
May I answer now?
Yes, please.
Well, I'm pretty sure there are more than 2, but if you say which the most, is the money and the mindset. We try to develop if you how do I say this? We try to develop a good system, but people the knowledge know-how, get out their comfort zone. Also, especially I wouldn't like to say the legacy staff, but the people that do not equip with the technology, because we have a staff that's in the pipeline that before the COVID-19 or have little knowledge of the ICT or the technology, that they resist. They said that why should I use a EFMS system when I can use bookkeeping, a manual, so they try to resist that. So the mindset require to engage them, buy in, to make sure they are on board as well. And on the second one is the money, of course. Without money, no policy or nothing will move forward. Thank you.
Director, this is my question now. Just to follow up on what you talked about the mindset, which I think is really interesting, and it's an aspect that is always present, always present in most of the reforms in education. I'd like to ask if you could share a couple of tricks or how you address the mindset and the resistance that people had in adopting the technology. If you could share that. A couple of
Thank
tricks.
you. Well, I use only 2 tricks: carrot or sticks. Basically, Well, to be honest, we seek, first of all, we seek a support, buy-in from our management. I think this is important. I think it's happening everywhere. As long as your boss, in this case, the minister or the deputy prime minister, supports this reform, support system, I think we have halfway done, prepared for us already. So the second half would be providing the adequate the material, engage them in workshop, invite them over, explain to them. But based on our change management analysis, and it's a giving that there are three types of staff at work. One that very eager to to seek change. Any change will, it's inviting. The third tiers or the third group is, it's, we call it gray area. They can, depends on what's it for me. If something that entice them, then they would be more than happy to do. But the third level is the I don't know, it's the terminology that it's the black. I wouldn't say black, but someone that don't care, don't want to change, and want to stick to their their comfort zone, and that's it. That's one that we use a different a tactic or a different way to engage them. But in our government, we don't have the policy of fire, so different way approach to engage them.
Okay. And I would say that it's probably a job in progress, and it's everyday change. Director General, we thank you so much for making time to share the experience of Cambodia in our today's workshop. And please continue if you can. If not, we wish you a good trip, as we know you are in the airport. And
thank you. Thank you much. I mean, it's not done as here. If any of our colleagues or participants have any further question that need to clarify, or you can shoot me an email. I'm sure Annika has my email. And if you need a demonstration of the system, we are more than happy as well to share with to show you.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
All the best to everyone here.
Thank you, Director. Thank you. I'll hand over to Richie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I know a lot of questions kept coming about how is the ministry monitoring all of the spending, and that was a really good presentation to show you an initiative that Cambodia is taking on really monitoring everything in real time. Now, I want to give a little bit of support here where His Excellency talked about how a lot of people don't necessarily understand or buy into the idea of having a system like this. So let me share a little bit of my perspective on why an information system like this is needed. Okay, so what was just explained was a financial management information system that was very specific to education. The main, what are these? This is not something, this is Cambodia doing a very specific thing that is very aligned with their system. And it's something that is being encouraged for the digital age in every country. So everyone has information on their fingertips. So FMIS is usually a computerized, a digital IT system used by the government to manage the public finances. Every business has a system like that. Why shouldn't the government, the entire government, have a system like that too? It's meant to be comprehensive, and it's supposed to have detailed tracking and management of the approved budget, the sources of financing for programs and projects, budget transfers, supplementary allocation. All of the information is supposed to be there. And all of the updates on actual spending are supposed to be entered in it as they happen, so that anyone who has access to that system can then pull out reports and see where the spending is at that moment. The purpose is really to improve transparency, accountability, and efficiency here. And it's really good to see in Cambodia that there is a web-based system, so more people would actually have access to that real-time information. Now, in many countries, there's a system that exists at the central level, but if it's not there at the line ministry level, at the Ministry of Education level, you wouldn't get that up-to-date real-time information. So this is a good initiative of integrating the central and the line ministry system, and all of the funding information, spending information would be in one place. So that's what a financial management information system is. I will move on to discuss decentralization. This is something you saw in almost all three presentations. There were all these conversations about, oh, another layer, another level of government is doing this activity versus that activity, okay, in financing. So just very, very basic concept of decentralization. There are two types of systems in different countries, okay? A lot of countries are fully centralized, where budget decision-making power is concentrated at the national government level. They are the ones who decide everything. So even when it is a line ministry, like Ministry of Education, it's the central government department, that level, that decides everything. But then there's lots of decentralized systems around the world as well, where authority is of decision-making on different aspects, it's actually given to regional entities. So it's moved down into the system. I'm giving a very, very general overview here. Every country, things look very different. Here's another level of how to figure out what's happening. This is a general classification on what type of decentralization exists. There will be a link shared in the chat for one of the papers where this comes from, which specifically discusses education system decentralization. So this table is pulled out from this publication. So in every country, this will look slightly different, but overall ideas remains the same, and which level of government is operating will also be slightly different depending on the country. So in deconcentration, it's still fairly centralized, where the main responsibility of decision-making still stays with the national government, the central government. However, the administration of that decision moves down a bit more to the regional or district offices. So that's what deconcentration is. What it means for budget and financial elements is that regional managers have more authority to allocate and sometimes reallocate the budget. So there will be some funding that will be allowed for them to decide on, okay? Devolution is actually more decentralization. In devolution, there's permanent transfer of decision-making responsibility around everything to lower levels of government, whether it's state governments, provinces, municipalities, districts. Here, the subnational governments are given the power to allocate education spending. So that budget envelope comes to the national ministry, then the national ministry does the same thing and gives some kind of a budget ceiling to each of those lower levels of governments, and then they can decide how they spend that money. In some cases, they also have the authority to actually raise funds. So they can actually have taxes or other ways to get revenue. So they get this additional revenue that can be put into the education budget. Then there's delegation. This is actually moving responsibility and decision-making power all the way down to the school level. So here, the school principal or the school council, some kind of an elected body at the school level, can receive the funding, and then they can decide how it should be allocated at the school level. These are very big generalizations. The reality in every country depends on what type of decision-making is needed. So for every little aspect, there would be a different type of decentralization happening. I'm going to show you a very quick example from Vietnam. And there's a full analysis of this actually also conducted, and that link will be shared in the chat as well. So this is an example from Vietnam where the budget process actually happens at 3 different levels: at the central level, at the provincial level, at the district level. And there are elected bodies that are helping doing the decision-making, and then executive bodies, the actual agencies, government agencies who are executing the budget process and the spending of the money. So you can see how decisions are actually being made at very different levels. It's not just the central government that's responsible for everything. So that's decentralization. I just want to do a quick poll and see if you know whether in your country there's any kind of decentralization. Do you know if subnational governments have any kind of decision-making authority? Just answer yes or no. So a poll will be launched. Just think about it. The poll is coming soon.
Only 1 minute.
Oh, yep, question 2. Okay, I will share the results now. Looks like in the countries that are represented here, most countries do have some kind of decentralization. Now, the beauty of decentralization or the hope of decentralization is that the people who are closer to the actual service delivery know better how to spend the money and what solutions can be implemented. Central government is too far up to know exactly what to do. So this is a bit more of accountability that can be brought in and decision-making authority that can be with the people who know the problem better. I was going to have one more poll, but we'll skip this. This is to see if that kind of power lies with the schools as well. Annika, let's not do this poll. We will skip this one for now. Okay. Let me move into now data. This is going to be key for anyone who's trying to engage in the budget process. Lots of questions came in. How should I engage? Before you engage, you need to look at what is the reality in your country. What is happening with the budget? What is happening with education financing? So you know what to advocate for. You need to be empowered with information when you go and talk to anyone about it. At the international level, there are several ways you can find information. They will all be at least 2 years old because of the cycle that I explained. All of this information is collected by UNESCO at the country level from the Ministry of Finance for finance information. And then it is processed and presented, and there's a lag on doing that. UNESCO Institute of Statistics is the main body responsible for collecting and sharing this information at the international level. They provide almost just the data around finance, but then there are lots of other agencies and other reports that are produced using that data and sometimes supplemented by additional data to make sense of that. I would highly encourage you to go look at this data for your country and how it compares to other countries. So links will be shared in the chat right now about all of the UNESCO type of reports. So Global Education Monitoring Report has an entire chapter on finance every single year. Global Partnership for Education has databases that you can look at. Education Finance Watch that I mentioned yesterday also analyzes this. And UNESCO Education Finance webpage also has information. Then there are additional analysis and data collection that happens. National Education Accounts is a comprehensive activity that happens. It does not happen in every single country. It requires additional budgets. So this is something where governments can consider this, donors can consider doing this for their countries. So if you go on their website, the links will be shared. See if your country has an NEA, and you'll have a better idea of how finance is working. World Bank also has an initiative called Boost Open Budget Portal. And a lot of data and analysis is shared there on what budgets look like in different countries. So go look at that for your country. And if it's not there, then lobby to get your country on it. And then OECD Development Assistance Committee data shares the data on what external aid is coming to the different countries. So this information is given by bilateral and multilateral organizations on what they're doing in education space. That's the international level. But of course, for your country, there will be lots and lots of national sources of budget data. Ministry of Finance is the one that is responsible and the holder of all of the information regarding the national budget. It will have the budget statements, executive budgets, proposals, budget speech, budget law, things like that. Now, a lot of ministries are now making this publicly available very easily on their websites, but not everyone is doing that. So maybe go see if that information already exists on their website, and if it doesn't, lobby for how to make it more transparent and accessible. Central banks and central statistical offices also have this data, but the question is always how accessible it is to the general public. Sometimes it's on the website, sometimes it's not. And then Auditor General's office will have the audit reports. Again, it may be on the website, it may be not. Education-specific data will be with the ministries that deal with education. They would have the detailed budget breakdown. Sometimes the regional and local offices, depending on the level of decentralization, they will have their own specific budget. Education sector plans. This is something that exists in almost all Global Partnership for Education partner countries. They have a bit more contextualized information that links finance to the sector programs and priorities. So there would be a lot more budget information in there, and analysis of that will also be in there. And then bilateral and multilateral donor websites would have information about the funding that they're providing for specific programs. Go look on the major donors you have heard of in your country, go look on their website, enter your country's name, they will have information on their programming. So those are routine information that gets collected. Periodically, countries also conduct financial reviews. Sometimes these are funded by donors, sometimes they happen by the national government itself. Public expenditure reviews, it's a diagnostic tool to evaluate the effectiveness of public financing. So what was achieved, what outcomes, outputs were achieved through the financing. Public expenditure tracking survey is looking more at how the leakage may be happening within the chain of spending. So they really kind of try to track dollar going from here, where did it end up, and where the leakages were, if there were any. Quantitative service deliveries surveys, these happen to really understand the efficiency, like what in public spending, what are some of the incentives and for actually spending in the correct manner. So that's where these surveys happen. These do not happen in every country, do not happen every year. There are special projects that happen. Sometimes they can happen for one sector, sometimes they can happen for the entire government. So if these do not exist and you're a donor organization and you want to engage in the finance dialogue in education, perhaps consider collecting this type of data. I'm going to quickly move into our next section. I was hoping to have more dialogue, but I'm going to give you a few ideas already on how to engage with the budget process, okay? So the first thing to do is really analyze whether, once you've collected all of this information about the budget, okay, you've been able to look at the proposed budget, because that is supposed to be a public document. Everyone should have access to it. You take a look at it. And then you try to analyze for yourself how the money is allocated, whether it's actually aligned with the policies the country is saying. So your elected members would have gotten elected on a certain platform. They would have said that they want to prioritize X, Y, or Z. just certain areas. Now see whether there's money allocated to that within the budget. You all look at the national development plans, look at the education sector plans, and see if money has been allocated to those things. Then also look at the financial feasibility. Now, sometimes they might say we are going to have this much money going towards this, but then you will see that the government is not able to raise the revenue that they think that they will raise. And the government is going in giant deficit, as in they're working on a lot of borrowed money. So is it even feasible to have a plan like this? So think about that. Be informed by evidence. So use evidence as a tool to engage in this dialogue. So as much information as you can find that information, engage with other stakeholders, engage with your colleagues to actually then analyze that data. Lots of analytical tools are available online, but in general, you will find researchers within your own country that can do this type of data analysis. So if your team, your organization does not have that capacity, go look out to universities and research institutions. Some civil society organizations already do this kind of analysis. So look at the data, gather the data, then analyze it for what you need. What is it that you want to advocate for? And then use that. And then most importantly, collective action is what will probably help you actually get heard. So one group talking here, another group talking here, an individual parent, an individual organization saying something, and all of those organizations going either to the line ministry, Ministry of Education, or going to your legislature won't get as much attention as it would if you collect together, if you engage with existing groups and get them to hear your perspective. So engage with education coordination groups that exist within the countries, which are usually coalitions of different stakeholders who want to engage in education coming together. In some countries, they're known as the local education group, where donors, CSOs, ministries of education, everyone is sitting together and helping making decisions. Use citizen forums. Go meet with your legislators, but as a collective group, because that will probably get information together. Just 1 second. And then use traditional media. Go to news outlets, get articles written in newspapers, and get your perspective out that way so the entire citizenship becomes aware of it. Use social media. These days, people are reading that a lot. You can actually sometimes even talk to your legislators through social media, through X, formerly known as Twitter, or through Facebook, or through LinkedIn. A lot of social media exists there. People are using Insta Reels and TikTok to actually put a speech out there. So YouTube, put things out there and distribute it so people hear about it. We have 20 minutes left where I will try to see if we can get some ideas from you. So I will stop sharing and ask Annika to share screen now so I can see everyone and I can see the chat. So at different stages of the budget cycle, there are different things that all of you can do. Annika, could you share the slides?
Yes, just one moment, please.
Okay. So I'm actually going to flip the order and we will talk about budget evaluation first. Next slide, please. So I'm starting with budget evaluation because before engaging in any kind of budget dialogue, you need to see what happened in the previous year. Okay, that's what budget audits and evaluations and reports are meant to do. It's an assessment of how the budget was spent in the previous year. It will look at whether it was spent according to the budget law that was released, the rules that exist on fiscal responsibility within the country, all of the accounting rules. Was it spent efficiently or effectively? Did it reach the goals that it was supposed to reach? Was there wastage? And then budget execution rate. Was all of the money spent or only a certain percentage spent? If lower amount of money is spent in 1 year, the Ministry of Finance the next year will be very reluctant to increase the budget, because that shows them that the ministry may not have the capacity to actually spend that money. So one cannot demand for more money when you're not even able to spend the money that was given. So Ministry of Finance might even reduce the budget if it wasn't spent all the way. And this was discussed by our speakers from Uzbekistan and the Philippines as well, that there's continuous monitoring happening. The monitoring is happening quarterly in the Philippines to make sure that that money is spent so you can ask for more money the next time. There is audits, internal audits done, and there are external audits done. All of these audit reports are really trying to say whether the money was spent correctly or not. Then there's some additional evaluations done, like the public expenditure reviews, the expenditure tracking surveys, things like that. So that's the kind of evaluation one needs to look at before you can engage in that. So during the evaluation period, next slide, please. I want to ask everyone, what do you think? And put your response in chat. How can different stakeholders engage? What are your ideas? I know you've been asking me this question and other speakers this question on how can we engage, but think about it. I've given you some ideas. Be creative. Think about how a particular group can engage during the budget evaluation, okay? And by engagement, I just mean what action can you take? So if you're a civil society organization, what information you can actually collect, assess, share as an organization? What powers do you have? As teachers' unions, as parents, donors, researchers, what can you do during an evaluation stage? I will give you a very simple answer. Read the reports. So see what audit reports exist, what public expenditure reviews exist. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the next step. Yeah, I like that response here. First, the total budget, then how it was allocated. Yes, look at that analysis during the evaluation. See what was publicly shared and what happened in reality. Exactly. Empower yourself with that information so that you can engage during the budget formulation stage. Now, we've discussed what budget formulation is in very much detail, so I'm not going to go through this more, but let's think about what can one do during the budget formulation stage. Next slide, please, Annika. So what do you think? What actions can stakeholders take when budget formulation is happening? Can teachers' unions go to the ministry and talk about whether the salaries and the benefits that teachers get is enough for them to do the work? Can they come up with a proposal to the ministry? Yes. Third-party organizations can also come up with research presentations. Yes, exactly. Great answer, Fatih Akhtas. Creative awareness, creating awareness on less resource sectors. Exactly, Nana Ama. Look at the project's actual allocation. Yes. But then also do the analysis and give that to the ministry. Maybe they haven't done that analysis and they don't see that problem that you are seeing. So bring that over to them. Civic monitoring, yes. Maybe do a civic audit, right? So as a civil society organization or teachers union or a parents association, you can look at the audit report or look at the reports that are being presented. And if your region is mentioned, go to the school, go to the region and try to see if that actually happened in the region. Maybe what's available at the national level, the information is not correct. And if you see that, then during the budget formulation, you can make the ministry aware that that data was not correct. It did not match the reality of that region. Yes, make sure during the budget formulation that equity issues, inclusivity issues are actually included. Talk to them, talk to line ministries to see if they're actually including that. Maybe sometimes the line ministry would require you to then start talking to legislatures or start talking to even Ministry of Finance to show that this is important to the citizens. Okay. All right. Next step, which is the budget approval. Now, budget approval, very few other actors have a role in this process. It's really for the legislatures to examine the budget, debate it, and pass it. Now, in most countries, there's some debate that happens, but even legislatures do not fully understand the details of the budget analysis, especially when it comes down to line ministry budgets, right? So they don't have the skills often, or they don't even have the budget to have staff to do that kind of analysis. So as stakeholders who are not legislatures, you can go meet with them and provide them with that analysis. Put it in a language that is easy for them to understand. Talk to them about what the priorities are. They don't always have the time to listen to all the citizens, but if that conversation is put together by certain organizations and put to them in easy to understand reports, they will be closer to the citizens that way and really listening to what is needed in the country. Okay. So more ideas on what can happen during the budget approval phase? Yep, Zara Arshad, you're absolutely right that there are no pre-budget consultations with parliamentarians in most countries. So sometimes you have to create that space. There's no formal space that exists, but parliamentarians are often required to take meetings with their constituencies. So go make appointments, call their office. If they're not picking up the call, literally mail them a report. Mail them your analysis. It could be just a few slides of PowerPoint printed out on paper. Have them actually listen to what you're saying. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is the most important next for budget execution. Yeah. This is the most important. This is the entire year, right? Money is being spent. Now, during that year, what can people do? So I'm not going to go too much into detail right now, and these slides will be shared. And I do want to emphasize that all of this information is actually in the guidelines that the GPE Secretariat has produced. And I will, right after this, share the link again with everyone. So lots of ideas are there, but budget execution is the time when every stakeholder could constantly be monitoring the budget execution, constantly be monitoring whether the spending is happening. So as Anna Marie pointed out, that in the Philippines, they are doing the review on a quarterly basis, right? So that is happening at the central level, but you can be going in at the school level, at the provincial level, and check with them what is happening. So there are different ways to actually engage at that time. And I would encourage everyone to put any ideas they have or give ideas on how they may have all engaged in monitoring budgets in their countries during the execution time, how money is being spent. Arshad Ali, you're right. Decentralization can be effective in budget execution, where the decision of how to spend the budget is being made at the local level. However, transparency is still needed. So sometimes if the decision of how the money is going to be spent is being made at the school level, the school may not have the capacity to make that information easily accessible to everyone. So maybe other organizations can then go help the school make that information available. In some countries, schools would, government will help schools do this, where a board or information is put right outside on a notice board at the school on how much money the school received for what purposes. And then people can see. So if it says this year the school received some money to buy desks, and then the public sees that there are no desks there, this is where parents need to engage and go ask the school, what money did you get and what have you done with it? And that happens during the execution phase. Anna Marie is pointing out that Department of Education in the Philippines has a budget sponsor from the House of Representatives and the Senate. We have space to engage our legislatures before it deliberates in the Congress. So that's fantastic. This is something that ministries can do, where they try to find a champion within the elected members to engage more deeply with the ministry, and then they are the ones who actually advocate for improved financing in the parliament. Okay, departmental budget monitoring reports at monthly meetings. Yes, officials, government officials, education officials can ask for this. They can actually implement this within their departments and request the finance people to give them that information so they can make better decisions. They can actually engage with other stakeholders as well when they are able to have that information for themselves, and then they can share and be able to talk to other stakeholders that something is being made, the elements that the group is advocating for is already part of the priorities that that particular department is taking care of. So those things can happen. I'm looking at the time, and I'm sorry I won't have any time for additional Q&A, but I really like how well everyone used the chat messages here. We got so many ideas in here. So I will encourage you to keep thinking about these things, and I will stop here and invite Margaret Irving from the GP Secretariat to give a few remarks and feedback.
I think we've lost Rushi, but Margaret, over to you.
Thank you. Sorry. I will keep my remarks very quick. I just wanted to say this has been such a great event. I've been so impressed by the high level of engagement. I wanted to say particularly how valuable it was to have colleagues from Uzbekistan, from the Philippines, from Bhutan, and from Cambodia to give their experiences, because I really think that kind of understanding of what's actually happening in other contexts is extremely, extremely useful. So yeah, big thanks to the KIX EMAP Hub. We can tell from the level of engagement that this is obviously a subject that's really of interest to people. And I think that the quality of the exchange here has been really high. So I'm really encouraged to see this. I believe there will be a post-survey distributed. I'm sure colleagues from the Hub are going to say the same thing, but please do fill that in, both I think it helps a number of us partners to better understand what exactly the needs are and what is valuable and what you would like to see more of. So please go back and monitor budgets and make sure that they are effective. Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. So we'll move now to the closing of the event. And before we do so, a couple of thank you notes. First, to Arushi Terway, who was leading the workshop from its conceptualization to implementation, moderating, and keeping us all engaged during these 2 days. Thank you as well to the speakers, Margaret from GPE, Orzugur from Uzbekistan, Ugyen from Bhutan, Anna-Marie from the Philippines, and our Director General, Pierre Reed from Cambodia. Thank you as well to the team that worked on the background, especially Annika, who was coordinating all the technical aspects of this workshop. Also, thank you notes to GPE and IDRC that make this KIX program a reality to all of us, and to NORAC, who is the host of our EMAP Hub. There were a lot of questions if we will share the recording, the resources. Yes, all of this will be made publicly available on our website. You'll also receive an email with these resources. One of the resources that Arushi was talking is a GPE resource, which is the guidelines on national education budgets. And this is again going to be shared in the chat. There are also questions about certificates. Yes, we'll be able to share some certificates. You will receive by email a Google form where you can fill your request to get a workshop certificate. And please note that we have a minimum attendance of 60% to get this workshop certificate. We also want to know what we did well in this workshop and what we did not do so well, in your opinion. So there will be a link to the post-event survey, to the post-workshop survey that we invite you to please fill out, and also tell us where you would like us to continue engaging on this topic that has been demanded by our GPE partner countries. We also ask you to follow us on our channels, on our KIX EMAP channels of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And while the workshop finishes today, the KIX EMAP work continues. And we will have, already next week, we will have a webinar on transforming education through technology in Southeast Asia, where we'll look at case studies of where technology is supporting education systems in the Southeast Asia region on the 21st of March. And Annika now is sharing here on the upcoming events. On the 21st of March, we'll have a workshop that will look at accountability for gender equality in education. And on the 27th of March, we'll have another webinar that will focus on the topic of gender equality again, but looking from evidence-based education research in South Asia, Middle East, and North Africa. So we thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to continue to engage with you. Our KIX journey is just starting. Thank you all.